Hello and welcome to Embracing Universal Design for Learning with an Implementation Science Perspective. I am your moderator today. I'm thrilled to be your moderator for this breakout session. My name is Sarah James. First, a few logistics. This session will be recorded and archived on the conference agenda page after the conference for about 1 month. Closed captioning is available by clicking on the CC button on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. The interpretation icon in the same area will provide access to Spanish translation. We'll ensure that ASL interpreters are spotlighted along with a PowerPoint and presenter. Please ensure your volume is muted to avoid background distractions while presenters speak, and we encourage you to engage with others in the chat, and where possible, keep your camera on so we can see your smiling faces. With that, I'd love to hand you over to Laurie and Leah from Open Access to take it away with our presentation.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Laurie Balsano, Wright, and I am a coordinator with the Open Access Grant.
Hi, and I'm Leah Padilla. I'm another coordinator on the Open Access Grant. Welcome, everyone.
And on our home screen here, our first slide, if you want to have access to our home-based document and our slides and all of the information that we're going to be sharing today, there is a QR code, there is a tiny URL, and I believe we also put the home base in the chat as well. That would give you access to all of our materials. So we are from Open Access, and we are a small but mighty team of 7 people. Troy Tickle is the executive leader of Open Access. Leah and I are the coordinators on the project, and we have 3 content lead specialists in the areas of Universal Design for Learning, UDL, Assistive Technology, or AT, and Augmentative Alternative Communication, AAC. And we have our amazing assistant, Mel. The Placer County SELPA Open Access Project is honored to work alongside our collaborative partners, Antelope Valley SELPA, North Inland SELPA, Humboldt County Office of Education, and the Placer County Office of Education. Our project is funded by the California Department of Education and the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence.
So here is our learning journey for today. So to get started, we are going to talk about our learning objectives, and we want to get to know you and our audience. And then we'll also share a brief overview of Open Access.
So we are happy that you joined our session today, where we have a hopeful agenda that includes the following objectives. We hope that you will identify and build upon your current level of UDL implementation, utilizing various interactive tools provided in this session. And we hope that you determine practical next steps, supports, and resources for continuing your own implementation with that implementation science perspective. Our learning journey is rooted in 3 concepts noted here on the slide. The first one is access. We will briefly walk through the basics of UDL and implementation science to ensure a deep understanding of the active implementation formula to achieve positive student outcomes that we are all hoping for. The next part is build. We will utilize an implementation interactive notebook to identify and build upon our current level of UDL implementation. This time will focus on building an implementation team and data collection. Then we will move into internalizing. We will determine next steps for your team by using a variety of resources and tools to develop goals, create your implementation plan, and continuously monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of your plan. We are excited to share with you those guided steps to support your school or district in the creation of a robust and sustainable implementation that will benefit all learners.
So we want to take a minute to get to know where you are on your own UDL implementation journey. So take a second and in the chat, if you could share your name and your role, and then where are you on your UDL implementation journey? So are you a 1 implementation what? Like what's going on? I'm just here. Number 2 would be I'm thinking about getting started with this journey. And then 3, I'm started with my implementation of UDL. Or 4, go ahead and mute yourself, Leah and Laurie, and I'll take over on this presentation. So share in chat, please. Right, I'm seeing a lot of 2s, 2.5s, and 3s. Right, perfect. All right, well, we are excited. And we hope that you can learn, 1 or 2 steps that you can take to help support you in that journey.
Yes, we are excited to meet you where you are at in your journey. So open access, we're going to take just a few minutes to explain who we are and what we're all about. So we are one of the statewide special education resource leads. We are grounded in the foundational belief that with access to quality instruction, curriculum, and instruction, students with disabilities, and really all students, can engage, actively participate, and learn within inclusive settings. And what makes our project unique is that we highlight the importance of learning and participation for all through universal design for learning, assistive technology, and augmentative and alternative communication. There are a few links on this slide here. One is to our website, and all of these links can also be found on our home base. There's a link to our website, a link to our YouTube channel, and the image takes you to our one-page flyer.
So open access, we offer 3 tiers to support schools and districts with implementation or with throughout the state of California. And our universal tier 1 supports include resources available on our website. And then also on social media, we share many resources and offerings that are available to all. And then we have targeted supports, which include training, coaching, and mentoring for schools and districts who reach out to us on a voluntary basis. So when schools or districts are looking to build capacity and become experts in the area of UDL, AT, or AAC, the open access team is ready to help and to support with that implementation. And then our intensive supports include providing technical assistance to 22 LEAs throughout the state who have been identified as intensive through the compliance and improvement monitoring process, or SIM. So we provide support for these districts, and we are aligning and leveraging continuous improvement work within the state system of support. And then our ultimate goal at Open Access is to build showcase sites throughout the state to demonstrate UDL practice in action. So that's some of the work that we're sharing today, those steps that we're doing as we implement those demonstration sites. So at Open Access, we are part of the statewide system of support. And so, like Laurie said, we're the special education resource lead in the area, one of them in the area of universal design for learning. So in the chat, if you want to tell us what has been your experience with the statewide system of support, And what resources or initiatives are you most interested in learning more about? And I'm going to add a resource from CCEE that has links to resources from the statewide system of support. So feel free to share in the chat some of those. Who have you been working with in that statewide system of support? I know we're all here today because of SIP, so amazing work there. All right, as we move along on our learning journey, we're going to do a quick overview of UDL and implementation science. So now we're going to look at ways that we can identify supports that are needed for UDL implementation. So let's do a quick overview of what is Universal Design for Learning. So the primary purpose of UDL is to design learning experiences that reach every student. And in order to do that, we must think about two foundational concepts: variability and barriers. So we all know variability is the norm. UDL believes that everyone is a variable learner and rejects the idea of an average learner. And we know that variability is contextual and that we can plan for it. So UDL recognizes that every learner is unique and has their own individual strengths, preferences, and challenges. UDL rejects the notion of that average learner because it acknowledges that there's no single standard or typical way that we learn. So we know instead, UDL embraces the diversity of learners and aims to create those flexible learning environments that can accommodate and support this variability. And then we also know that barriers are in all environments. And UDL acknowledges that barriers to learning exist in the environment rather than within the learner. So these barriers can take various forms, such as inaccessible materials, rigid instructional methods, or physical obstacles. UDL aims to identify and eliminate these barriers by creating flexible methods, materials, and environments that accommodate the diverse needs of our learners. And then we know that the ultimate goal of Universal Design for Learning is to create expert learners who know what works best for them to learn. So we want to create learners who are purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable, and strategic and goal-oriented. And then our work that we do at Open Access, we base all of the implementation work on implementation science. And implementation science provides some key implementation drivers for making sure that the programs and practices we want to put in place to improve outcomes for our learners take hold and grow. So there's three main drivers that we'll look at today. There's leadership and competency and organizational drivers. And throughout our time, we'll talk a little bit more about how we can support that implementation so things sustain through time. And then when we think about all of the great work that's happening, we have improvement science and implementation science. And we know that improvement science, according to the Carnegie Foundation, is the methodology that disciplines inquire to improve practice. So it's about understanding what knowledge is necessary to improve practice and how to gain that knowledge. And then once we have that, then we can take a look at implementation science. And that refers to the methods or techniques used to enhance the adoption, implementation, and sustainability of a program or practice. So today we're looking through the lens of implementation of universal design for learning.
So the active implementation model was developed by the National Implementation Research Network, or NIRN, and it's unique because, like other process models, it outlines specific steps for implementation. But unlike other process models, it provides additional frameworks and resources to operationalize each step, making it very practical for implementers. An adapted version of the formula says that in order to achieve significant outcomes, we need three things. First, we need an effective innovation. And this might be an effective evidence-based practice, a program, or a guideline. Second, we need effective implementation strategies. And these are the strategies used to change the behavior and mindset to align with the effective innovation. Third, we need a context that enables implementation. This is about considering where the implementation is taking place. And it is important to note here on this slide that when developing this formula, NIRN purposely included multiplication signs, because if any of these equal to 0, the organization will not achieve the significant outcomes they are looking for. On the next few slides, I will go into each area a bit deeper, starting with effective practices. Innovations, such as evidence-based practices or programs, need to be teachable, learnable, doable, and readily assessed in practice. Before implementing an evidence-based practice, it is vital to have a clear understanding of the program and its suitability for your organization so that administrators and staff can make informed choices about what to use. It is necessary to have sufficient detail about the evidence-based practice so that you can train staff and administrators to use it competently, measuring the use of the practice with fidelity or integrity, and then replicating it across all your implementing sites, such as classrooms, schools, or districts. An effective fidelity assessment provides evidence that the program is being used as intended and is resulting in the desired outcomes. The document linked at the bottom of this slide and also linked on our home base is a one-page overview of ensuring that your innovation is usable. The 4 stages of implementation are exploration, installation, initial implementation, and full implementation. And each functions, they each have specific functions to each stage. And so to help build context, I will give a brief overview of each stage. Exploration is the stage where teams identify their needs and options and make decisions about whether or not to move forward with a particular practice. Installation is the stage where teams create the infrastructure and put necessary organizational supports into place for implementing a particular practice. Initial implementation happens when team members are beginning to implement those agreed upon practices, strategies, or actions. And then full implementation occurs when the new practice becomes the standard practice. Another important element is that effective implementation happens in stages. It is important that schools and districts have an awareness that effective implementation occurs in stages to allow for that intentional planning for the change process. When teams understand that the stages are integrated and not linear, they can match their activities to each stage, which will increase the likelihood of moving successfully into the next stage. They can prepare for activities and challenges that they may face, which again will increase the likelihood of sustained implementation in the educational practices. Again, at the bottom of the slide there is an implementation stages overview page for you to review. Enabling context is all about building relationships and building capacity through collaboration. Implementation teams make it happen by ensuring that implementation is done through engaging the community and creating welcoming environments. Implementation teams support the implementation, sustainability, and scale up of usable innovations. Teams integrate the use of these stages, drivers, and improvement cycles in order to intentionally identify problems and solutions. Through plan, do, study, act cycles, or PDSA cycles, practices are improved and a hospitable environment is developed to support more effective and efficient ways to work. In this video, we're going to hear from voices from the field. Open Access is a technical assistance provider for the San Jacinto Unified School District. Using implementation science, our team is providing support to ensure the successful implementation of their district initiative, which is Quality First Instruction. So we're going to hear from John Roach, the Assistant Superintendent of Ed Services, and he is going to share with us about their effective innovation and the steps that they are taking within their context to actively and effectively implement Quality First Instruction.
So this is probably the most exciting part for me, is because you're always trying to find that time to do the work. And when you take that approach, for me, it's that you're viewing it that the work is something extra and above that you're doing. The realization that we've been able to reach is this is our work, right? So for us to be able to find the time for our team to do the work it is the central focus when we're coming together in our regular meetings. So I meet weekly with what was originally the educational services team, and now we call it the district team, right? Coming together, and we are engaged in some component of this work during that time. So that's where we use the time to create our fidelity inventory. That's where we use the time to plan how we're going to support principals to have a deeper understanding of it. It's actually time we're using right now to go and do our walkthroughs because we wanted to set a baseline now that we've created this tool that we intend to use. So we're using our time that we would normally be meeting weekly to go and actually walk classrooms. Then we're able to come back and then use that time that we would normally meet to review our implementation data and look for trends across the district. So we find sufficient time by switching it from we're doing this because it's something that needs to be done that's above and beyond, but instead it's something that it is the work that we're doing on a daily and weekly basis.
So we invite you to take a moment to reflect on all that information that we just shared. Feel free to use the home-based document or drop it in the chat. But during this time, we'd like you to consider, how does implementation science connect to you personally? Or maybe answer or think about, what did you learn something new about how implementation science affects practices, how it's deeply connected? And how can maybe you can think about this, how could you apply that active implementation formula in your work tomorrow? So feel free to drop in the chat or add to the home base. I can't see the chat, Leah. Do we have anything in the chat that we can?
Not yet, no.
Okay, that's okay.
All right, and feel free if anyone wants to share their implementation journey in the chat or on the home base, or you can unmute too. All right, we're going to move on to the next step of our learning journey. So we are going to talk about creating an implementation team and then having those data collection pieces to make sure that what we're doing is working. So we're going to discuss identifying and building upon current levels of UDL implementation using some different tools.
And we are so excited to share with you the Open Access Effective Implementation Interactive Notebook. This is a comprehensive step-by-step guide to support your school or district with effective implementation for UDL or any initiative that you are choosing. Your team has access, or you have access to make a copy of this notebook. It is linked here on this slide, but it is also linked on our home base. So we're going to kind of walk through this document. There are 6 chapters, and each one focuses on a key component of sustainable implementation. Today, in our limited time, we are going to spend the majority of the time talking about the first couple chapters, creating the team, and then jumping to developing the plan. So in creating your team, when you're creating your implementation team, as John was talking about, it is critical to develop a team that consists of cross-departmental perspectives, specifically including general education and special education teachers. It is important to include administrators, teachers, coaches, service providers, support staff as members of that team. It is essential that the team members have experience with using the effective innovation, such as universal design for learning. It is important that team members have positive working relationships with school leadership and staff. And it is imperative that team members have sufficient time to dedicate to the team's functions. As a leader, it is important to provide clear expectations for members of the implementation team. Things like letting them know that the team will be meeting regularly to share and monitor implementation progress. That members of the team will be making a 2 to 3 year commitment to participate in the school's implementation team. That members of the team will implement the innovation, whether it be universal design for learning, high quality first instruction, or whatever initiative within their work environment, and that the team members are asked to become champions for the work and to lead change ideas. Now, this is specifically, we're focusing on pages 4 through 11 in that notebook.
And Lori, there's a couple comments in the chat about some people feel like in their district, they might be solely the one implementing UDL, or it's a focus, but the data collection piece and the accountability isn't quite there yet. So this building of your team and creating a team is so important to that sustained implementation. So as we go through this, we can come back to those pieces too.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for that. I am going to play another video from John. We're going to hear from John again. And this time, John is going to share with us how his district aligned their implementation team to meet the various initiatives happening within the district. So the team from San Jacinto has been very successful ensuring that cross-departmental perspectives became active members in that implementation team.
We, through this process, right, of open access, we formalized our district implementation team. So after doing the district capacity assessment, we recognized that we did not have that process formalized, right? We were trying to connect it to our other work. We were trying to build those bridges and those connections. And what's happened through this process is we've now decided that we will formalize that team. And so, and then we are very intentional. At this point, it's a district-only level team. It is the leaders in each of those areas, but we've been comprehensive to include everything from we have educational services, we have student support, we actually have our director of businesses involved, we have our personnel department that's involved, as well as all of our curriculum and then my assessment part as well, because we're trying to go through and be clear on defining what's expected, how to collect that data, how to analyze that data, and then measuring whether or not we have full implementation and outcomes. The other part that we've done is on that district implementation team, we have our equity director who also oversees writing our LCAP. So the goal is that we're really able to align the work that we're doing, because it's about what's happening in each classroom with the different levels of support to the district office.
There we go. Okay. So when creating a team, it is helpful to consider aligning teams. Aligning initiatives is part of the vision, and it helps school leadership teams create coherence and support effective, efficient, and sustainable implementation toward a common goal. When alignment is lacking, it can lead to outcomes such as misalignment, incoherence, abandonment, frustration, and more. So consider a few key elements when creating teaming structures to support new programs and innovations. So think about how in your school or district can you repurpose or expand existing teams to support implementation. Maybe that can help with breaking down some of those silos. Think about teachers and staff who can be included in implementation decision-making. What strengths can each team member bring, and why is each person important to include on your team? So we encourage you to take these questions back to your team as you get started with the development or finalization of your team. And again, there is a digital copy of this linked on this slide. A few more things to consider when creating the team, such as roles, schedules, and locations. So each school or district will need to determine the specific logistics that work best for their team meetings. Creating a consistent meeting time, location, and having a rolling agenda ensures that members are more likely to attend and provides the team with greater continuity. One suggestion from the field is that meetings should occur during the school day, or members should be compensated for additional work time. There are links to these tools on the slide at the bottom and on the home base document for you to access as you begin to build and create your team. Here's just a brief testimonial from Trina Tafoya, Director of Special Education from the Fillmore Unified School District. And we really wanted to share her team's effort to align what they call their Committee of Inclusive Practices team with the other various initiatives of the district. So Trina shared with us that the Special Education Department and the Ed Services Department have collaborated on professional development offered to both general education teachers and educational specialists. Coordinators from each department have collaborated on opportunities to align current initiatives, and coordinators have provided professional development to certificated and classified staff. So as you're working on developing your team, we always like to invite you to participate in an equity pause by taking just a few minutes for reflection. And these are some questions to just ensure that your team represents diverse, engaged members within the school and community. And it allows you to make adjustments to your team based on your discussion around these questions. So are members enthusiastic? Are they those champions? Do we have representation from all departments? Do we have anyone missing? Do we have representation from staff representing disproportionately impacted student groups? And are we offering team leadership and development opportunities equally? Just some questions for the team as they build out the team.
And Laurie, in the chat, we have a question I think that aligns to this. Some of the SIM teams have found difficulty, including teachers or getting teachers involved to take a big picture approach. So they were asking if we have any resources or suggestions to help teams engage their teachers in moving forward with these plans.
I think we do have some, we work with 22 LEAs in this process, so we have some familiarity with that. And I think those that are allowing, and sometimes it's tough with getting subs if the meetings are during the school day. Sometimes we have flexibility on early release days when we hold those meetings so the teachers can attend. But yeah, we do hear that it is challenging at times to get the general education or any classroom teacher to those meetings because of coverage. So
I know, I think a lot of our districts have done some creative planning with when we're holding the meetings to make sure that they do have that representation from all members who are implementing. So
yeah. And I know we've had some where it's this month they are being asked to attend, this month they aren't. So it's not monthly, but maybe bi-monthly is another option.
And we'll talk too, a big piece is having strategic communication plans. So if someone might not be able to attend those meetings, we're still sharing out the information, the action planning that's happening across the district. So everyone is aware of those steps that are being taken.
So once the team is created, the next step is data collection. And there's a whole chapter about this in our interactive notebook. Today, we're just providing an overview of data collection. And during this step, schools and districts conduct a thorough needs assessment to identify strengths and weaknesses of their current practices, considering the diverse needs of learners. It is important that teams utilize and analyze various types of data. During this stage, teams will implement a data system that includes the development and use of data to support decision-making and improvement activities. This should include qualitative data, quantitative data, fidelity data, student outcome data, such as satellite, map, and street level data.
All right, so now we're going to determine next steps, supports, and resources for continuing UDL implementation with that implementation science perspective. So on our learning journey, we're moving along and moving forward. So we're going to take a look at creating goals, implementation planning, and tools that can help support you with that sustainable implementation. So as teams create the implementation plan, we have to keep that capacity in mind and determine what we need to do to make sure that we can successfully implement this plan and it can be sustainable. So we need to think about the data that we're collecting as we create the plan, and then creation of SMART goals that are linked to specific activities. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what are these SMART goals. And in your implementation interactive notebook, these resources are on pages 18 through 27. So when developing a plan, capacity data allows the team to determine the district's current ability to implement. And so in a little bit, we're going to look at some capacity data tools. And then we talked about, and we heard in the videos about scale-up data. So where is each school with their implementation, or where is the district with their implementation? And then building fidelity data and student outcome data that we're reviewing to make sure that what we're doing is working.
All right, one last video here. We're going to hear from John again, and John is going to provide us with more information about their data collection in San Jacinto Unified School District.
So, in our district, we're focused on quality first instruction, and we basically want to make sure that we've been able to clearly identify what the essential components are that we'd expect to see in each and every classroom. And we're really focused on the phasing of the lesson. And so we've gone through a process where we want to make quantifiable things that can be observed in each part of that lesson, so that it's really teachable, observable, learnable, and doable, right? And that means that as the practitioner, they are able to do it. And as the observer, you're able to recognize it and then collect information and give feedback on it. So, for us, that's really that street level data because we're wanting to make sure that it's practiced at an individual level. But what we're doing is we're using this fidelity as a fidelity inventory. Is we want to then look for trends across our schools or our district. So we're at a point where now we're able to go and walk through and really start to say, we calibrate. So we're able to say, yep, this teacher is in a guided practice phase of the lesson. There's specific indicators that we'd expect to see, and then we can collect that data. Really, if we see it, we mark it. If we don't, then we don't. That lets us see trends across the school and eventually across the district, so we can identify those priorities. So that's our implementation data. Where we're at with our administrators is we're trying to then connect that to outcome data for students. We want to be able to build an alignment between, if I walk through a school, a grade level, and I see that a group of teachers or an individual teacher is doing that consistently as measured by the fidelity inventory, do we see outcome data that matches? So, and again, we use that at a street level data, right? A map level data, and eventually the satellite. So we're looking at individual teacher, we're looking at grade level or school-wide, and then we're also looking across the district. And our long-term plan is, how do we align where we see higher levels of implementation, having a direct correlation to students performing closer to grade level in those assessments that we utilize.
So we're going to take a second to reflect on what data do you currently have for UDL implementation, and what additional data might you need? So go ahead in the chat if you want to share some of those data tools that you have or that you need. And in the chat, I see some comments about the data and some fears sometimes with teachers and the data that maybe it's a sign of failure. So we really have to think about, as a team, how are we sharing this data? In the video, John talked about trends that they're seeing. This isn't evaluative data, right? It's observational. In general, this is what we're observing. So we have to be strategic in how we share that data. And so I know a lot of you are probably familiar with the importance of SMART goals. And we know that when we create any goal, IEP goal, UDL, implementation plan goal, we need our goals to be specific. They need to be measurable so we know and we can track that success. They need to be attainable. So we need realistic goals that are challenging but still achievable. And they need to be relevant to the team. And then we also need them to be time bound. So we have to have a set time frame for accomplishing these goals. So on page 24 in your notebook, there is a link to the SMART goal information. And then also you can make a copy from the link on the home base. So when we think about your goals for your UDL implementation, what are your current goals? And is there a need to refine or create a SMART goal for UDL implementation? So in the chat, or if anyone wants to unmute, would you be willing to share what are your goals currently? And I know earlier there was a comment about we've done some district-wide training, but then how do we measure it in the classroom? So thinking about maybe some tools, UDL look-fors, or ways, instructional rounds, where we can go and collect that data to help us with the creation of those goals.
Sorry, that's our timer that we don't need.
That's all right.
Sorry about that.
Keeping me on time. So in the chat, there's some comments. We don't have goals yet, but right, this is that time to think about what are our goals and where are we going with our implementation teams. So we have a few resources we want to share with you that are linked on the home base to help you to support with those goals and activities. So there is an action plan resource, and then also an open access sample UDL implementation plan. So feel free to take a look at those. And then in chat, does anyone want to share some of those current activities that you have planned to help support the UDL implementation at your site or your district? All right, and then the last thing we want to leave you with, if you want to go to the next slide, Laurie.
About that.
Oh, no problem. We want to leave you with some resources to help support you on your UDL implementation journey. So we've linked 3 different tools that have been helpful as we're going through this implementation journey with districts. So one is the CCEE UDL GPS tool. And there you take a short multiple choice quiz, and it gives you customizable recommendations on next steps for your journey. And then we also included a tool from CAST, which is the UDL school implementation criteria certification. And that looks at 4 different areas to help support that implementation. And then also with capacity building, the district capacity assessment is another tool that looks at those 3 drivers that we talked about at the beginning with organization, leadership, and competency to see where you are and what needs to be put in place. So we want to encourage you to take a look at those tools and know that we are here at Open Access to answer questions or help support with that implementation journey.
Oop. Oh my gosh, sorry. How about that?
So we're going to move on to our optimistic closure, and we thank you for going along this journey with us. So what, if you can share in the chat, one step on your UDL implementation journey that you're going to take, or maybe one tool you look forward to investigating further. So go ahead and share that in the chat, a tool or a step you want to take. And then we want to share a couple things before we go. And we have some sharing our implementation notebook and starting the discussion of creating a team. Great.
Excellent first step.
The district capacity assessment tool. Taking those steps toward systematic implementation of UDL. Looking at our materials and reviewing them. So great steps, everyone.
Yes. And just a few things here. We linked our website on this slide. It is also linked to our home base document. So we invite you to bookmark this site as it is filled with a lot of universal resources for UDL, AT, and AAC, including our open access UDL resources. We have our UDL implementation roadmap, UDL lesson look-fors, and our famous flip kits are available on our website. We also invite you to follow us. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we have a YouTube channel. We do post, try to do it a couple times a week, at least 3 or 4 times a week, on current happenings, trainings, informations, Tip Tuesdays, Fact Fridays, all sorts of good stuff. So we'd love to see you on our socials. And we just want to thank you for attending our session today. We invite you to reach out to us with any questions or connections for further assistance for implementing your effective innovation. Good luck on your journey.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you, Laurie. Thank you, everyone in attendance, for our commitment to students and their families. It is our mission to accelerate, it's our mission to accelerate our educational system to innovate, include, and impact positively for all from birth to childhood and beyond. The presentation slides and resources can be accessed in the session description section of the VFairs agenda page. And if you have any additional questions, please head over to the information booth where you may find the answer. Be sure to join us for a refuel and recharge with DJ Diamond. And then our keynote and closing remarks from Alicia Anderson will start at 12:40. If you have any additional questions, please do reach out. Don't forget to share on your socials and tag @SIPinclusion and the hashtag @SIPCon2024. Thank you for being here. Bye for now.